Shutdowns, supply chains, and a little tiny dinosaur are three of today's topics on CNN 10. I'm Carl Azus, out of the studio but still online, and we thank you for taking the time to watch our show. We've reported on restaurants and nightclubs closing in other countries as governments try to slow down the spread of the COVID-19 or coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is happening in the United States. As of 11:59 p.m. on St. Patrick's Day, movie theaters, gyms, and bars in Miami, Florida were told to close their doors. Restaurants there are still allowed to sell food, but they've got to do that through takeout, delivery, and drive-through. What's happening in Miami is just one example of how American governments are reacting. These are some of the scenes from Colorado, where restaurants and gyms are among the businesses that are closed for 30 days. In Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and some other states, groups of more than 50 people getting together in one place are banned. Concerts and parties, school events, business meetings, they've all been impacted. Ohio called off its presidential primary on Tuesday, though three other states still went ahead with theirs. And the federal government says Americans should avoid getting together in groups numbering more than 10 people. The thinking behind all of this is that if people can keep their distance from one another, there'll be less chance that they'll spread coronavirus around. COVID-19 is a new disease. Health officials say people don't have immunities to it. It appears to spread easily, and it's still mysterious to doctors. They don't want a situation in which local hospitals get overwhelmed with patients without enough health workers to take care of them. So they're increasingly encouraging Americans to stay home. And some are warning that if we don't, a scenario like the lockdown in Italy is possible when Americans are required to stay home. That's happening in San Francisco, California. People there are only allowed to leave to go grocery shopping, to the bank, to police, to the pharmacy, or to get gasoline. Governments have the right to enforce this.
Questions right now about government-mandated quarantines and how do you enforce those? So let me ask you this. What legal authority does the government have to declare quarantines, and how can a quarantine be enforced if someone violates it?
Yeah, Anna, so our government has very broad authority, I think broader than people may realize, to order and enforce a quarantine, meaning a restriction on people moving into or out of either specific places or broader geographical regions. Now, under federal law, the government, through the Department of Health and Human Services, has the authority to order a quarantine as necessary to prevent the spread of communicable diseases. That can either be an isolation order on a specific individual known to have a certain condition, or in rare cases we can see a broader mass quarantine. The last time we saw that was over 100 years ago. In 1918, 1919, there was a mass federal quarantine when we had that different influenza outbreak. Now, also, all 50 states have laws enabling governors to order quarantines. So how are these enforced? Well, first of all, you hope it's sort of self-enforcing. You hope people do the right thing and obey. But if not, they can be enforced by fines, and in some cases, some states and under federal law, even by arrest and prosecution. We hope it doesn't come to that. We hope everyone does the right thing, but the government does have the power, if necessary, to enforce a quarantine.
Panic buying, which is exactly what it sounds like, is being blamed for the empty store shelves that are becoming a more common sight across America. Industry leaders say items like toilet paper are being produced and shipped just like they are at any other point in the year, so there's not an actual shortage of this right now in terms of supply. But because there's such an increase in demand, with people buying it as soon as it hits the shelves, it's creating a challenge for suppliers to keep up. One question is, could panic buying, or just stocking up, lead to real shortages down the road?
Panic shoppers picking shelves clean, stores closing early just so they can restock shelves, restaurants limited to just carry-out. Coronavirus fears have Americans worrying about the once unthinkable. Could it soon be hard to find food in the U.S.?
No need to rush into the stores as if all of the food will be gone and there won't be any left to restock. No. No problem with the food supply chain, and they will be able to restock the shelves.
Officials with Morton Williams supermarkets in New York say traffic in their stores is up 300 to 400%. Online grocery delivery service Instacart says it saw its highest customer demand in the company's history this past weekend, with customers downloading the app as much as 4 times the normal rate. Twice Monday, President Trump tweeted to try to quell shortage fears. Support your neighbors by not hoarding, said one. And we are confident that supply will continue to meet demand nationwide, said the other. On Sunday, the president spoke by phone with more than 24 grocery store and supply chain executives.
We had a long conversation with them, and they're going to work 24 hours around the clock, keeping their stores stocked.
The problem isn't a shortage. Warehouses are full of non-perishable foods, enough to last for months. But healthcare and consumer industry groups are sounding the alarm. The supply chain could break down as more and more Americans stay home or fall ill, leaving fewer and fewer workers able to make, process, pack, and deliver. And that's not all. Groups representing such household names as Clorox, Procter & Gamble, and Pepsi fear other countries cutting off exports to the U.S. in order to keep supplies for their own sick populations. India, a major supplier of many drug ingredients to the U.S., has already limited exports of the painkiller acetaminophen. Germany has banned the export of protective equipment like masks, gloves, and suits. Then there are the millions of students who depend on meals from school lunch and breakfast programs. As states shut down schools indefinitely, fears grow kids could go hungry. In Texas, hundreds lined up for food handouts organized by public schools in Houston. Similar programs are starting up all over the country. In Atlanta, Pet Yerta was grateful for the food for children like her 7-year-old grandson.
Parents can't afford to get the food. Yeah, there's food stamps, but they do run out. So I think it's a good program that they're offering to the kids.
Meanwhile, food banks and food pantries are drafting emergency coronavirus response plans, as officials worry the hunger safety net for a whole population of Americans could soon be overwhelmed. Martin Savage, CNN, Atlanta.
10-second trivia. Hummingbirds are the smallest birds, but what type of hummingbird is the smallest? Bee, violet ear, hermit, or calliope? The smallest of the hummingbirds is the bee, which is native to Cuba.
When I first saw this specimen, it just blew my mind. I have literally never seen anything like this. It's even smaller than a bee hummingbird, which is the smallest bird alive today. The fact the skull is very fused, the fact it has lots of teeth, the fact it has these really big eyes, all suggest that despite its teeny tiny size, it was a predator, and it was probably feeding on small insects. When you have an animal preserved in amber, it looks like it just died yesterday. All the soft tissue in place, trapped in this little, window into an ancient time.
So what are professional athletes doing with so many of their games canceled? Some are still playing video games. In fact, a number of European soccer players are getting involved in a FIFA tournament in which each team picks one player to represent it online. We don't know what the prize is, besides maybe bragging rights, but whether it's FIFA or Fortnite, there's a chance the person you're playing and maybe beating is a pro athlete. Unfortunately, virtual winnings also come with virtual prize money. But it's cool to think that a League of Legends might be playing League of Legends, practicing their Minecraft of the battlegrounds of a battle royale, whether this turns into a months-long global offensive or hopefully just lasts for a fortnight or two. I'm Carl Azus, Joseph Case Junior High School. Shout out to all of you Cardinals watching in Swansea, Massachusetts. We found you on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CNN10.